One of the questions I get asked all the time is, how do I start sewing? If this question has ever crossed your mind at any point in time, this video is for you. Hi everyone, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Fanny Gregory and I am a Port Harcourt-based fashion designer. And this channel is dedicated to those who actually want to start their sewing journey from scratch and they do not have any other place to start except online. If you want to sew your own clothes on your own, this channel is for you. So I'm going to be holding your hand and work with you all through sewing your own clothes. Don't worry, my tutorials are going to be very easy to follow, sewing guides, step-by-step DIYs on how to cut and sew your own clothes. If this interests you, please subscribe, click on the notification bell so that you would make the best out of your sewing journey. Now let's get right into today's tutorial. To start your sewing journey, of course, you need your basic tools, okay? So to start your sewing journey, you do need basic tools. So I'm going to be showing you the basic tools that you actually need in order for you to be able to start your sewing journey with ease. So the very first tool that I am going to be talking about is the measuring tape, okay? That is one of the major tools that you cannot do away with. Of course, this is what the measuring tape actually looks like, okay? This is what the measuring tape looks like. As a beginner, you need to take measurement. It is very important. There is no way you can start sewing your clothes without taking measurement. Even if you're sewing for yourself, you need to take measurement. So the measuring tape is very important, okay? In the next tutorial, I am going to be teaching you how to read a tape. So if you do not know how to read a tape, I'm going to be showing you ways in which you can read both the front and the back tape, okay? So this is actually very important. You would need this to take all the measurement on your clients or even on yourself. So let's assume you're sewing for yourself. So you would basically need a tape to take your own personal measurement, and you would need a tape to place the measurement on your fabric. So a tape is very, very important. Now the next thing is the scissor, okay? So this is the scissor you actually want to get. You're not going to get these kitchen scissors because there are some scissors that you might not want to use in your sewing journey. So when you want to get your scissors, get this particular scissors. Now this scissors is used to cut out your fabric, your pattern paper, cut out your threads, whatever thing you want to do, okay, that has to do with cutting out. You would need a scissor for that. So this is actually very essential for your sewing journey. You cannot do sewing without cutting out anything, and of course if you want to cut out, you have to use your scissor. So your scissor can actually replace your thread cutter, okay? So if you cannot afford a thread cutter, you can actually go ahead and get yourself a scissor, because this is very, very important. Now another important thing that you would also love to get is a pattern paper. So guys, this is what a pattern paper actually looks like, okay? Now a pattern paper can be brown or it can be white. A pattern paper is used to cut out whatever you want to cut out. So after taking your measurement and then you want to place your measurement, you can decide to use a pattern paper to do that. I would advise you as a beginner to use a pattern paper because you do not want to go ahead and be destroying all the fabrics that you have. So a pattern paper would help save your fabric, okay? If you do not want to destroy your fabric, you would use a pattern paper. I would really recommend a pattern paper for every beginner because a pattern paper saves a beginner all the stress. If I am teaching you any tutorial and you want to draft it out, you can use a pattern paper. You don't need to go to the market to buy a fabric. So this is actually very important and it is very cheap in the market. So I think a pattern paper could cost over 150 naira or thereabouts. So you can get this and start your sewing journey. This is one essential tool that you should not miss as a beginner. Another tool you would want to also get is your marker. Now I talked about a pattern paper. What would you be using to draft out on your pattern paper is your marker. You can actually get a marker, or you get a pen, or you get a pencil, whichever one works. Okay, so you can go ahead and get a marker. You can decide to get maybe 2 or 3 or 1, depending on how long you want to use it for. Okay, so a marker is actually very important. This will help you draft out whatever you want to draft on your pattern paper. So this is actually very, very important. So a thread is another essential tool as a beginner that you should not miss out, because this is what you're going to be using to stitch on your fabric. Okay, you can decide to get as many colors as possible. You can decide to get yellow colors that are actually neutral, colors like black, colors like white, so you can use that to actually start your sewing journey to make it much easier for you. So a thread is actually a must-have for every fashion designer. I recommend this. It is very essential and very basic. Okay, now another basic thing that you would also want to have is your bobbin and your reel. So this is what we call the bobbin and the reel. Now this is a reel and this is a bobbin. Okay, so when you're starting your sewing journey, I would advise you to actually start a sewing journey with this. This is very, very important. I hope that you can actually see this. Without this, you cannot sew. Okay, so this is actually really important, this too. Now you can decide to get 2 of the reels if you do not have money. Okay, this is what the reel looks like. Get 2 of the reels. It is very important because you do not want to be losing your thread every time and fixing another one when you have another cloth. So if you're sewing on a yellow dress today and tomorrow you want to sew on a red dress, you can decide to actually use both of them. Maybe use one reel and then stitch in yellow, then use another one and then reel your red thread. Okay, so getting at least 2 is far more better than getting just 1. So this is very, very important. It's as important as your machine, so you need to get them. If they do not have this when you're buying your machine, you should get them, because this is very essential for your sewing journey. And then we have the needle. Okay, this is the machine needle. This is the machine needle. This is for my manual machine. Okay, they are of different sizes, so you would want to get this because it is very important. You would have to find out the size that your machine uses. Okay, this is actually very important. Get yourself a needle. So the function of the needle, as the name implies, is to actually use it to sew on your machine. It is very, very, very important. Okay, get a needle for yourself. Make sure that you get the best needle, because different machines use different needles. Okay, so make sure that you get the needle that actually works for the machine that you're using, because if you get a needle that does not work for the machine you're using, there's going to be a problem. So make sure you make researches on the particular needle that you should get for the particular machine that you're going to be using. Okay, another thing you would like to get as a beginner tailor is your pins. Okay, now pins are actually very important because of course you would want to pin things down when you're sewing. As a beginner, it is not easy to be stitching. I'm not going to lie to you that you're going to just start and you're going to be stitching up and down and everything will just go easy. It's not possible. So as long as you're just starting your sewing career, you would need things that would help you pin down your fabric, would help you pin down your pattern paper, and you can also get your safety pin, or you get your normal pin, or maybe the pin with the big head. Okay, so get any pin that you would want to use. The function of this safety pin, okay, is to help you push your elastic inside, because when you're working with your elastic, you would need your safety pin to push the elastic inside the elastic band. Okay, I hope you understand what the safety pin is actually used for. Now you also need the ruler. The ruler is very important. There are so many rulers that you need in the market, but as a beginner, I would advise you to go for what you can afford. If you can afford other types of ruler, you can decide to get the curve ruler and pattern ruler. Okay, but if you cannot afford that, I would advise you to go for a straight ruler. Okay, straight rulers are of different types. You can decide to get this one, or you can decide to get a pattern curve ruler. Any one of your choice is okay, as long as you're able to connect your curves together and also connect your straight lines together. Okay, so a ruler is actually really important because you can use this on your fabric and you can also use this on your pattern paper. It is really important. It is one of the essential tools that you need. Okay, if up to this point this video has been helpful to you, please don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell. Also help me to share this video so that YouTube would actually boost this to other people that are yet to see this video like you. Now, another essential tool that I would advise you to get is your iron. Now, an iron is very important because for this iron, you can use it to iron out your things. Iron makes your dress, makes your clothing, makes everything you're working on very neat. So it is very important. I cannot do anything without my iron because working with iron gives me this professional look that I actually want from my sewing. So you would want to get an iron. It is very, very essential. Okay, it is one of the tools that a tailor, whether you're a beginner or you're a pro, should not do away with. Okay, so this is very important. I would really advise you to get an iron. Get an affordable iron. I would advise you to get a steam iron, but if you do not have the money to get a steam iron, you can get a normal iron. It can actually do the job, and maybe you use water to sprinkle on it, okay, while you're working on your iron. So this is very, very important. All right, now the major tool that you cannot do away with is your sewing machine. Of course, you want to get your sewing machine because you're getting into sewing and you would use your sewing machine to stitch all your clothes. So this is, in fact, this is the most essential tool that you need as a tailor. On the recommendation of which particular sewing machine you should use as a beginner, I would recommend that you use either the manual sewing machine or the tabletop sewing machine. The reason I am recommending this is because using the manual sewing machine will make it easy for you to navigate everything. Okay, as a beginner, do not rush and get yourself an industrial machine if you're just starting out. Start out with a manual sewing machine, or you can start out with a tabletop sewing machine depending on the area you are. If the area you are in uses light, or if the area you are in has light, okay, standard light, use a tabletop machine. A tabletop machine has a lot of advantages. It has zigzag stitches, it has straight stitches, it has weaving, it has a lot of advantages that you would not like to miss. Okay, but if you're in an area that do not have light, you can get a manual sewing machine and you are good to go. So start out with whatever is okay with the location that you find yourself and whatever you're going to be able to afford. Okay, so a sewing machine is very, very, very important. It is one of the most essential tools that you need. Of course, without a sewing machine you cannot start your sewing journey, except you want to be going to someone's house to sew whenever you want to sew. So if you are looking for a tool that you should get, a sewing machine, of course, is the number one tool that you should be thinking of. And then after the sewing machine, let's talk about the materials. Okay, now you need a material to be able to sew. It is very important. You need a material to be able to sew. So what kind of materials would you be needing as a tailor that is just starting out? Okay, so I would advise you to go for materials like Ankara, materials like cotton. These are materials that can actually be manipulated. You can work easily with it. You can take out the stitches and nothing will happen, because I will not lie to you, as a beginner you would always have reason to take out stitches. Even professionals take out stitches when they make mistakes. Talk more of someone that's just starting out. So if you're just starting out, you would always take out stitches. You would be losing your seams every time you make mistakes. So you would need this kind of materials like Ankara, cotton, or maybe crepe that are not stretchy to an extent, and you can actually use them. Okay, because if you're starting out with materials that are very stretchy, it would be very difficult for you to sew on. Okay, now this is going to be a tip. If you're working on a stretchy material, make sure that you A-stay the material. Okay, I'm going to be showing you an A-stay, what it looks like. in subsequent times when I start teaching you how to sew, okay? Because I always love to use a stay in all my sewing. It actually gives this neat look. So if you're working on a stretchy material, endeavor to use a stay, okay? But then as a beginner, make sure that you use materials that are very, very easy to manipulate, all right? Don't go for materials that will give you issues. Go for materials that would make your sewing journey very easy until you become a professional. And yes, if you're wondering if you can actually sew from online, it is very, very possible. I started learning how to sew from online, okay? So it is very easy. When you start learning how to sew the basics from online, you can definitely go ahead and upgrade your sewing journey, okay? So I basically started online, then I decided to upgrade my sewing journey. So yes, I am a product of someone that started online, and I am here to tell you that it is very easy. And if this is what you're interested in doing, please subscribe to my channel. Do not forget to click on the notification bell if you want to start the sewing journey with me. And of course, I am very much ready to hold your hand and work with you. See you in the subsequent tutorials. Love you and bye.